Okay, so who's going to start? Just start. Okay. Was that impatience at the end?
That was interesting because, like, were you trying to be sort of like timid? Or something?
Yeah.
Well, whenever I didn't realize this would happen, but when people started doing it, I immediately like imagined either like them or like someone. Like I imagined a teacher with you, and I imagined like a principal of the school, sort of. And you would just imagine them wearing the shoes.
Yeah.
A little girl who got to wear like a princess dress.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was quite happy to go to school.
Yeah.
Show off her new shoes. Okay, now what happens, I mean, so we're talking about interpretation of a particular life event, and now when we're thinking about putting that into a piece, the observations that you made in how each person interpreted it, that's sort of like a single isolated event. So how would things, that's one thing to think about. How, if you want to really communicate that specific experience to get them to realize those particular things, then you're going to need to leave space for sections of the music, and maybe video would be a good hint, because it might not be video with sound, but you could record children, at a school or something like that, to kind of give cues to what it is that they're doing. It's sort of like, remember we talked about abstract expressionists. Abstract expressionists were abstract, and they wanted the listener to have some kind of internal response to that. There's no explicit cues that they would have to understand that, like a picture. But if you work with sound and video and live performance and shoes, those all have symbolic meanings, or all have real-world meanings. So that could be a way of signals that you could throw those up on a screen and do these type of interpretations, but not tell the audience what it is. But that will kind of focus them in on that particular thing, and it's sort of almost a cue for them to stimulate them thinking about children or schools or something like that. So when they see the shoes, they might think, when you're doing that, oh, this has something to do with children and going to school. So you can make it explicit, you could make it more subtle than that, but those are dynamics you can explore. Now, how would that happen if we did that as sort of a group?
So the idea that I just had, like, because we all, in addition to having sounds, we all sort of moved the shoes to represent, like the timidness, or when he did the impatience, he really went more like this. It might be cool if we were wearing the shoes. We would all sort of be acting in our own kind of, like in our own separate thing, and then whoever's watching, like, yes, everyone would be the first day of school, but they could see, just as if you walked into a classroom and saw the first day of school, you would be able to see the first day of school in each of us. And I just realized that sounds sort of inarticulate, but
no, it's artistic.
Necessarily, yes, it would be an ensemble, but it also would be where if you focused only on one part, you'd be able to still get that same message.
Right, and the other thing I think is interesting is that when you use shoes in this way and you're using them as instruments. If they're on your feet, people might not necessarily think of the shoe itself as an instrument because it's connected to the body. So one thing you might want to do is create contexts where maybe you start with shoes on the table or shoes on the floor that you're not wearing, and then put on the shoes. That way that you have kind of what you're doing is it's like Duchamp's fountain, the upside-down urinal. He's taking something and recontextualizing it so that when people see you use shoes in this way, they're saying, oh, that's not the original function. And then it becomes a different experience, becomes a more aesthetic experience. So if you start with that and then go and put on the shoes, then they're looking at the shoes on a person in a completely different way versus if you started off just with the shoes on your feet. So those are dynamics to think about too. All right, is there any other things? You want to try another one?